Good morning and welcome to the Ridiculously Early J Morning Show. My name is Michael, and once again we are working on the jprez, the presentation tool for writing videos or presentations in the J programming language. We're actually in a pretty good state right now. Over the past couple episodes, we've had the ability to play back macros. I'm not touching the keyboard right now. This is all playing from this line right here. This is a macro describing the way that this line was typed. Then we can see it evaluated. We can jump forward ahead, or we can sit there and play the information back. I think there's actually a slight bug in this one. It doesn't know how to handle the key here or possibly there isn't a key here that describes how to remove this whole word at a time. I think there's a missing character here. Possibly it's the letter K, I'm not sure. But for the most part, this is a very usable system. We can press tab and we can actually go in here and I guess it's not quite working right, but there's a few bugs, like the cursor position for the history, it seems to be a little bit off there. Twice there's some, okay? So if we press, the point is that we can jump around in time, we can record our macros, we can go back in time and play back what we just typed. Ooh, sometimes, apparently sometimes it crashes. But for the most part, things are working. I think I need to go through and collect some of these issues. No, that's not what I want. Yeah, I was working on a different project last night, or yesterday, over the weekend. But in any case, I think that I plan to do a sprint so sprint comes from this practice called Scrum, where you try and arrange it's usually for when you're working in a team, but you try to arrange your list of things to do into this backlog concept, which is just a flat prioritized list. And then you pick out the ones that you want to do in this time period, and then you work together as a team to get all that stuff done in that time period. So I arbitrarily move some stuff into a sprint, and I want to revisit that. This might turn into just being a cleanup episode, but we'll see. So these two are easy. They're not very important, but I think they're just in here because they're easy. Org mode. So org mode is this thing you're looking at in Emacs here, which is my text editor. And it gives you the ability to do like collapsible outlines. You can also like track time in here. And I was going to do this. There's a way to track individual items, and I don't care about it anymore. First of all, it's not specifically related to the project. It's only related to me learning how to clock time for these recordings so that I could go back and say, at 8:04 a.m. I was rambling about something. I was rambling about Scrum or whatever. Backlog, grooming. But it's not really important. So basically, I'm just going to remove this. I use a better tool now. I've acquired a different tool for editing videos, and I actually get to see the transcript before I do any editing at all. In fact, I use the transcript to edit things. So I've got a word processor point of view, and I can just read. And so I don't need this anymore, because the text itself gives me what happened in the video. It's very hard to tell what's happening in a video when all your videos are a little tiny circle of you and then some text on the screen, and then you got like a little tiny thumbnail that's about this tiny over here in a video outline. You can't really tell what's going on in the timeline, so it's hard to organize. But once you have text, it's much easier to organize the flow of a video, put labels on things and figure out what happened and what 10-minute chunk you want to cut, because it doesn't have anything to do with the story of the video. Basically, I just don't need this anymore. I don't do any kind of work where I'm tracking time on minute by minute level. For now, I'm just going to delete this from my backlog and from my sprint. I do have this bug with the do world, and I do have a bug with, this isn't a bug, but long output lines just get cut at the moment. So I've got a crash. So like there are more important things to work on, like this fact that it's crashing at some point. But if I say 200, it's actually not what I expected. I expected, let's see, it's definitely screwing up a little bit there. You can see that like I think what's happening is it is wrapping, but let's see, what is happening here? I think the display is wrapping, but it doesn't know that there were so many lines in here, that there were multiple lines in the output. And so that needs to be fixed. So it looks like at the current state, not wrapping of long input lines. It looks like they wrap, but how would you say? jprez doesn't know or the REPL doesn't, but jREPL doesn't know that they've wrapped and puts the cursor in weird places. So I'm not sure where the issue is there. So this is definitely, I would say this is a high priority issue. So I'm still going to keep that in my sprint here. But what I was getting at is it was a 2-week sprint, and I just picked that number arbitrarily. I didn't try to like pick 2 weeks worth of work. I just picked some work, put it at the top, and called that the sprint. And then I said, okay, it's going to be 2 weeks, which is not how you're supposed to do it. So now I finished everything in 1 week, except for these 3 issues, and then the org mode stuff that I just deleted. And yeah, this is actually a low priority, but I'm going to do it anyway just because it kind of ties in with the support the escape code that toggles wrapping. So put the terminal in a mode that just causes everything to wrap automatically. Yeah, these are very related. In fact, what used to happen was, I'm not actually sure why this is happening this way, because I think what used to happen is that when it reached the end, it just stopped writing. If your string went past the end of the line, it should just disappear into space. So I'm not exactly sure why we're seeing this behavior here. So that's probably what we're going to work on today. Probably that's not going to be hard. And then hide errors, continue do world. Actually, we'll do this first. So this is the idea that, how do I trigger this? Let's see. I need to trigger an error. So maybe like just 2 plus cat or something like that. Domain error. Yeah. So let's save this temporarily. And I don't have a save indicator, and that bothers the heck out of me. GD. Yeah, see, it didn't save. I'm pressing Control S. I forgot. You have to be focused on the outline. Press Control S, and then now it added. It didn't have backlog, or it didn't have screenplay before. Now it saved the screenplay. So GD screenplay. Get diff of screenplay. Shows me the 2 lines I just added, both of which illustrate a bug. Excuse me. Sorry, just had a thought in the middle of that. I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have? Hey, Supnakor. This is my favorite person in the world, Supnakor. She has no. My thought was that this I could put like an error message here, trigger domain error, and I would put that in the macro. And then it occurred to me that it's going to take time to type that. Play that back. Yeah, if you go here and you press Shift N. Oh, we still got some issues with that. With it not using the correct state. That's interesting. Yeah, so we're definitely going to have to do a little QA round out here. But the thought is that it demonstrated what I'm saying. So sometimes when one sec, I got this little stupid light beam behind me again. My wife were watching, and she would remind me to order like a curtain or something for that window up there. Maybe that would help with this mysterious light behind me shining on my green screen. Anyway, so what I was saying is that when you play this back, because of a bug, it's showing this typing really fast. But sometimes I actually want that because you don't necessarily want to wait for something to type out when it's just like a comment or something. When I'm editing a video, I will very often just skip past typing out a long line and just show the completed text. I don't have a way to do that. Every character is inserted one character at a time. Hey, oh, the interior decorator has showed up to fix the, yeah, I had that little pillow there, and then one of the pillows disappeared. It's the, no, it's you standing in the way. That helped a little bit, but a curtain would be better. Thank you, that's good. Yeah, that's why I had that pillow up there, and then I guess we used the pillow. That's Sapna. Thank you. Sapna has been editing my videos here too, so she's been helping me with the transcription. So we have the software that converts all the text, all the spoken audio to text, but then we still have to go through and edit that text. And every time it sees the word or hears the word REPL, it spells it as REBEL or RAPLE. It mishears the word because that's not a common English word. There's some manual cleanup involved, and then also just quite a bit of me being in the middle of talking about how I want the program to work, and then suddenly talking about mysterious lights behind me and whatnot. There we go. There's a lot of editing work to do, and there's still a light behind me. Let's zoom. What are we gonna do? I just don't move my head, and then maybe it's fine. Anyway, right? Yeah. Even when I'm saying there's always editing to do where I try to get it where I'm not just pausing and you're not just waiting for me to type a word that I've already spoken. So sometimes I'll say banana or whatever, and then it's B-A-N-A. That's interesting. So when you just press E, you're supposed to be, I'm not sure what's happening there. When you just press E, you're supposed to be editing this line in the outline. And that looks like, as I'm editing that line, it is, yeah, that's what I typed. But I think it's, let's find out what it's doing. So if I just press, I think, O, enters a new line. Hello, that worked fine. That worked fine. That worked fine. I don't have undo yet. Now, why is that it? Why would it, oh, it's because it's so long. Maybe it's, if you have a really long line, yes, it's wrapping. Okay, so this is another wrapping issue. All right, okay, so let's restart this. So we have 3 wrapping issues, I think. So the first one is that this text, maybe these are the same. The first is that this text should be cut off here. That's 1. Text should be cut off. 2, it's not cut off, and the cursor is not moved. It doesn't recognize that there are multiple lines here. So those might be the same bug, might be 2 manifestations of the same bug, but they're definitely 2 different symptoms, right? So 1 is that it didn't cut, and 2 is that the cursor is not in the right place. So I'm gonna put that in here. Right now. So this is I'm phrasing this as a feature here, but it looks like they wrapped it. So 1 issue is that, so 3 issues. So 3 issues. 1, the lines don't currently get cut off in the, what I thought was the default wrapping mode or non-wrapping mode. 2, when the lines wrap, jREPL doesn't understand, that doesn't know that there were multiple lines and shows the cursor in the wrong place. 3, I haven't demonstrated this other than, or I wanted to re-record the screen. So 3, when editing a long line, so I'm just pressing E right now, I'm just holding down E, and it's wrapping the end of the line back to the start. When editing a long line, when editing a line long enough to overflow, it wraps back to the first, to the left side. I think all of these are happening for the same reason. They're all related. I think what I did to, well, hang on. I think there's some bounds checking on like the cursor, because it used to be that if you wrote to the edge of the screen, if you wrote past the edge of the screen, it would trigger an error because it's like you're saying, I'll go to a REPL that isn't messed up. So just plain JREPL. So you have the word 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, not a word, but, and then if you put like an X in slot 5 or in slot 2, you get this. But if you put an X in slot 5, you get an error. And so that's the same thing as your cursor going past the end of the screen, past the right side of the screen. And I think what's happening is that if you go past the right side of the screen, it's wrapping around to the left on the same line. And if you go past the bottom of the screen, I think that's giving an error. I'm not sure. Because that would explain why it's wrapping here. But if I make the screen much narrower by opening a new window here, and I restart the program, see it crashes when I try and place, when I try and draw that to the screen. So I think it's possible that there's 2 different, like one issue has to do with memory buffers. I suspect you wouldn't get an index error if you're just writing to the screen. So this is definitely talking to a memory buffer right here. So if I use the word term, well, whatever term was at that point in the stack, at that point in the call, that was, yeah, that should be, so what is RC? RC is this, and CHB is some big thing that's the size of the screen, right? The character buffer. The shape of the character buffer, shape of the character buffer is 24 by 0. That's interesting. That would certainly cause a crash. Why would the idea is that the idea here, what I expect from the character buffer is that it's initialized to the size of the screen. There's a different character buffer for each widget, but it should never be 0. It should never be 24 by, okay, I don't know what's going on. But I know that problem goes away when you make the system wider, and then so maybe there's a bug there. Obviously there's a bug there, but I'm not sure what the bug is. Maybe that's not related to what I was talking about. But anyway, in any case, I think there's a bug related to positioning that cursor. And I think that in order to compensate for the overflow issues, I cause it to truncate or wrap or something like that, and the behavior just isn't quite right. So there's really like a bug related to this, but it's more like I just have not implemented the feature correctly, and so I get undefined behavior. And that it's not so much that it's a bug and that it's wrong, it's just that it's doing something, it's doing whatever it's doing by default because I haven't told it what to do. So I think that's important, and those are my issues to edit there. And then support the escape codes to toggle wrapping. That kind of just, that's a feature of the terminal itself, and so when you're parsing escape codes, you ought to be able to send that. It's very minor, but it's just because it's related to that, I'm going to include. So that's where that's what's left in my sprint, and my sprint is supposed to last till the end of this week. So, and the point of that is that I expect all this to be done. I don't know if I'll get to today because I'm just rambling about stuff, but what can I do? What is important to do? I think these little adding keys, I think that is super easy stuff to do, and it's quality of life for me because the closer this gets to the keys I'm used to, that would be great. But I think that what I'd like to focus on this week is anything having to do with the editor. So I'm going to move anything with, I think it's called, so we've got edit here. Edit is for just editing it all, but I think LSED is what I use. So left side editor is what I was going to call it. It's not called that in the code yet, but that's I think anytime I see LSED, yes, all these are LSED. Let's move those towards the top of the backlog. And is that all of them? Okay. Command to evaluate the editor in the REPL. Command insert a line from the REPL to the buffer at position X. Set initial state of the editor for the slide. I think that is done, right? Oh, I see. Yeah, we just use headlines. I think parse block names from org mode or just use headlines. I feel like this is done, right? Because this on the left-hand side that's the text from a slide. It's not a good slide because it doesn't fit on the screen, but here, actually that's interesting. This line is rapid. This line is being truncated. So in this widget, the display is truncated here. This line goes, see there's an opening parentheses, there's no end paren. It's over here somewhere. Maybe this is going past the end of the line, and then this is just overwriting it because it's also a long line. Yeah, that could be it. Or possibly it's flowing off over here, and then this is covering. So I'm not sure. So maybe that's not, maybe that's a red herring there. But in any case, I think that is like working. I don't know what's different about this. I don't know set initial state of editor for slide. I think this just has always worked. So I'm going to say this is done. I don't know what else it could mean. We want to show a complete setup code before we derive it. Yeah, this feature has always existed by using source blocks in the outline. Oh, wait, but there's no way to create them. But there's no way to create them. But there is no way to create such a thing in jprez. You have to edit the outline file. So the feature here is to edit the initial state without recording a macro. So it's without recording a macro. Initial editor state without recording a macro. Meaning the viewer should not have to watch you type it. Should not have to watch every character get typed out. So in other words, you just go to the slide and it's on the screen, which is how it works now. But the intent is that there is going to be something where you're working in the REPL and you press a button and it adds it to your current editor. And so over time, the idea would be that you are either recording interactions with this editor or you are recording interactions with the REPL and triggering a copy of the line that you just did to the editor. And so you would see this build up over time and evolve from an empty screen. But the point is, what if you don't want it to evolve from an empty screen, but from some starting state? So that's what we need. So that's the idea. So I think that's actually probably like the most fundamental thing that you can do with the editor is to set the initial state. Then, so it says REPL animation to the REPL, let REPL push input to the editor buffer. Okay. So that to the left side editor, left side editor. I'm just going to say editor because depending on how the screen is laid out, it might not be on the left-hand side. You ought to be able to arrange the windows however you want. But internally for this document, I'll call it the left side editor. In each world, yeah. So then, as you are now pushing stuff to the editor, these two are redundant. These two are exact same thing. They're just different ways of saying the same thing. Yeah. So let's get rid of that one. This one has a little more detail. So store the visible, whether it's visible, whether there's a buffer, where's the cursor at each world. So we need a memento for the state. Command to evaluate the editor in the REPL. Command to insert a line from. So I need to think about the editor and the REPL. Evaluate that. Command to insert a line from the REPL into the buffer at position X. So you're in the REPL and you want to now from the REPL stick it into the buffer, into the editor at a particular position. So at the cursor is what it really should be, at cursor. I need to think about these for a second. So let's see, draw the editor cursor, draw the selection. Editor cursor, very happy with, that's easy. Selection is a whole new thing, right? Because now we're talking about multiple lines. We're talking about, yeah, I think the selection is going to wait a little bit. So because until I have multi-line selections, I can just think of the editor as being a list of lines, possibly with a cursor. So we can start with the idea that the editor is just a list of lines with an extra cursor drawn on top. But as soon as we get the selection where we have the idea of something that spans multiple lines, then that's the point where it becomes more than just an editor, or more than just a list of lines. Maybe that's easy, but I think I want to get the editor working and just treat it as a line editor for now and then move on. All right, but these commands so these are kind of mirrors of each other. One is to have, you're in the editor and you want to now, whatever line you're looking at, run it in the REPL. And then the other is you're in the REPL and you want to take whatever line you've just done and push it into the editor. So the command part is not that hard. Like you can write a command to do anything and just stick it in there and that's just plain old code. The trick is that we have a macro recorder for the line editor on the right-hand side on the REPL. Right? So we're recording these long macros that describe how the line is typed. And basically every keystroke is being logged by the editor macro, it's being logged by the editor widget. And I've got a level of ambiguity here. So the editor widget is a single line. And so your macro is, these macros are instructions for editing a single line of text. And then if I had another text editor, multi-line editor over here, it would be entirely possible to record a macro for that side of the editor. So maybe instead of a dot, we have a comma here or something. It wouldn't be a comma. You need a character that J considers a conjunction. So comma dot or something like that. I don't know, whatever it would be. At sign or ampersand, backtick. Any one of the things that the J considers a NOA. Not a NOA, but a conjunction, right? Like, as long as you're not doing an assignment, you can put anything you want on the line and you can use that symbol as something that does nothing. So if you have a line that starts with a conjunction, that will never do anything. I say it will never do anything, but now I don't know because Henry Rich just added something that he added back a whole bunch of extra syntax rules to the J engine like yesterday, to the J interpreter that would allow this to be like a valid J code. If right now, if I type like dot 2 plus 2, that's going to be an error. Oh no, okay, it's not an error. Dot 2 plus 2, it just does nothing. It's just, oh, it is a syntax error. Oh, okay, so wait, it's a syntax error that's being trapped. Right, so that's a symptom. Let me record that. Let me go back here, save this, and I'm going to edit this line and say 2 plus 2, NV doesn't record the fact that it's a syntax error. And really, this should be like a bug report, right? So this is in the inbox, and I need to go through the inbox as well to triage this stuff. Come on now. Every key I press is doing something wrong. But there we go. That's interesting. Why is it? Org is doing something weird here. That should be all indented the same way. Reindent. Reset that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, so that is a syntax error. Oh, hang on. Oh, because it's a syntax error, I used that as the syntax for macros, and I think you would have to put like extra space in here before it would run, and now you get nothing. It tries to evaluate that, but it doesn't work. So if I put like an @ sign here, there we go. It doesn't give me a domain error. It doesn't give me anything. If I just say @2+2, I can't tell if there's like a bug here or not. Is it also a display bug? Syntax error. I think we've also got the line wrapping issue here. Doesn't record the syntax error. How about that? So now, okay, now we see 2+2, and we do see syntax error 2+2. Okay, but dot that didn't quite work. Syntax error. Okay, so that actually does record that. The problem is still wrapping. It has to do with. I think maybe I was confusing myself, or maybe it was because I was doing that. Yeah. Okay. So it was just being treated as a macro, and yeah, because I didn't put an extra space in. You need an extra space there for it to be a. I should probably change this. I should probably just have this be like a dot or something be the macro indicator for the very first line. It's just that in org mode itself, a colon on the left indicates that it's like a verbatim line. So this is like the syntax of org mode. Whereas if you put a dot on the end of the line, it doesn't mean anything special. And in particular, you can say A_B, and org mode thinks that's like a superscript, or sorry, subscript. Whereas if you put a colon here, A_B, you see the underscore. And so you don't. It doesn't. This causes it to not evaluate org mode syntax, and allows you to put literal syntax in the file. Okay. You know what? I'm just gonna make this a triage episode because I want to go through and do a little sprint plan here. So I think the next thing I want to do is definitely editor stuff. I don't want to just make a million triage episodes. I don't know. Like I don't know what's interesting as to people, and I would think that this is not interesting because you will always see the backlog anyway. You would see the start of every episode has me looking at this backlog to see what I'm going to do that day, and so I don't know. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this down to a basic triage thing. So cut out the mysterious floating thing. I'm going to that's better. Definitely need a curtain. So I think I'll probably cut out all this nonsense about, or cut this down to a very short thing and just say, okay, I edited I'm going to do editor stuff. That's important. Keyboard bindings. This I consider more and more important as time goes on, which is also key bindings. I was looking to see if there were any other keys that might be useful. One of them is home. The home key is definitely useful. Yeah, so I don't have that in my list, but that would be like top of the inbox for me. It's home key to move to start a line. And also, yeah, this should save with the next one, Control S should save it anywhere. Key, Control S, key, home. So I guess the question is, do I want to go through this inbox right now? Since it needs to be done at some point, and maybe I should, since this is the day I've already spent half my time triaging or looking at errors. So let's see what's in that. Let's kind of sort this by importance. So this I say is important because it can take a long time while I'm using jprez. I agree with that. So start and stop macros during playback. Basically, most importantly, be able to stop macro during playback. I think that is both important and easy, and so I'm going to move that into the sprint. Hey, come on, man. Laptop. The tablet just came to life. Okay, so this is, yeah. I don't actually know that the long output lines is all that important. Like just in the scheme of things, is it really that important? Probably not, unless I'm insisting on long output lines. But we'll see. We'll edit it. I don't think it's that hard either. So it was in the sprint. I don't want to take things out of the sprint unnecessarily. Cut, copy, paste depends on having a selection. It requires a selection first. I think that's less important, but okay. Optimize the output of render bit lit. Yes, this needs to be sped up. It's not terribly important, but it's easy to be interesting to watch. Clean up the whole focus key binding mess. That is related to the thing right above it, right? I guess my thoughts have evolved, and the thought is now that in order to clean it up, the key binding should be table driven. But also in that table, I thought I had something in here about in the table. Yes. So not only should it be table driven, but they should all be in one place so that the key that you use, the key that gets recorded for the macro language, and then the macro playback are all defined in one table. Or really, in other words, you have a table that says, what is the key you press? What is the symbol or the token in the macro language? And then what is the function and the function to actually convert to execute for live reactions, for live binding or macro playback are all defined in one single table. So you bind the key to the verb, and then that verb should also have it should be a multi-column table. You have the key that you press, the character that gets recorded in the macro, or whatever string gets recorded in the macro, and then the handler verb, the name of the verb you want to execute. And then the next step is if you have multiple like multiple mappings of keys, key maps or whatever, keyboard layouts, which if it's an editor, you absolutely want that. You want Emacs keys, you want Vim keys. And so then my thought is you'd add another column to that table, but so what about the third one? Did they go into the source code and edit the table itself? I think the answer is no, and that you have some kind of like relational algebra for adding your own keyboard bindings. For you define your own table in like a user setting, and then you would have this whole like system for dealing with tables. Now, that seems like a lot of overkill for a configuration file. On the other hand, J is very good at tables and tabular data, and I don't know, so that's something to think about. But I think that's out of scope for what I'm talking about here. But absolutely have like at least the basics defined in the table. Maybe you can put that. Maybe that would just be in a separate file. Like maybe the quick answer is to put that in a separate file. Maybe the quick answer is for keyboard layouts is to just put that in a separate file. Separate file, or have two files, one mapping macros, macro code to and from function name, and another for key macro or key function or key function. I don't know, something to think about. So am I ready to do this though? Like key binding is a huge mess. I don't know that I'm like fully ready to do this. So this is a level A thing. I consider it important. Oh, you can put efforts on here. Okay, that's interesting. I consider that important, but it's like probably not. Like, I got a Mac sitting on my desk here. I've used it once. I hooked it up to a display, but the display was too small. I bought this drawing display, like a pen tablet kind of thing for drawing. And I tried hooking that up as the monitor, and it just didn't. It was just it's too small. It's great for drawing, but you need a full size monitor. And obviously I've got a full size monitor in front of me, but like the point is, I just haven't gotten my Mac set up yet to get this working. And since I develop on Linux and Windows at the moment, it's not super important, except for other people might want to use it. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna make this a B. It's important, but it's not important for my goals. So it's like my first goal is to get the thing out the door, to get this tool out the door and get it working. So let's go down the list. These are less important. I might even make this a C at the moment, right? This is just right. I'm gonna put a line to indicate where I've stopped sorting. Oops. So optimize the output of rendered lit. That actually is important. That'll be a fun episode to do, and it's probably small. And then that'll speed up a lot of stuff. And so then speeding up the escape code parser probably isn't so important. This is, you test that the macro actually produces the next line of code in the script. I want to do that. Not terribly important. Detect and bake usage of future command line history. This kind of goes with that. I'm gonna just leave it like that. The idea is that I think, as you saw, if I hit tab here, I can press up and down. Oh, interesting. That's not working. But at this point, right? Huh. Maybe it was when I press. I'm not sure. Somehow I managed to trigger a situation where I was seeing this load tangents from JKVM line was showing up in the REPL here while I was paging up and down in the history. So that's a bug. The question was, should I allow that to happen? And if I do allow it to happen, what happens when you pick something from the future? That shouldn't be possible. But this would catch the testing that your macro actually produces it. If the future macro has not been recorded yet, then when the tester sees that it tries to use a macro from the future, it should complain. But also in general, I'm missing also what this does is, I think this line right here, when it plays back, oh no, sorry, this line. No, it's their sum. When I do their sum, right? Yeah, see, watch, it's gonna say their sum. Oh, so there's, first the start state is screwed up, and then, yeah, I don't know. I think I still got some kind of bug there, but yeah, so here, that's definitely a bug. Because it's supposed to start with this, everything's messed up on the screen, but it's supposed to start with the first 10 primes, it's supposed to start with this line, and it's starting with the 2 plus cat line when you play back this macro. See, it starts with 2 plus cat. So I'm not sure what's happening there. I don't know. And so basically I should fix those bugs. So recalculate all worlds. So this is actually done on every command now. That was my solution to trying to make, you want to have as little mutable state as possible and to have as much what they call referential transparency, so that when you want to avoid bugs with mutable state basically. And so having your history contain, what am I trying to say? It's hard to demonstrate because it's so screwed up at the moment. But I guess my thought is that it's entirely possible to have a Jupyter notebook or something where you haven't evaluated all the cells in the notebook, and so you've got information cached in the interpreter that say x equals 7, and then now you add a line that says x equals 2. But the lines below it still think x equals 7 because you didn't reevaluate the whole system. And so forcing it to recalculate all the worlds as you input things, my system already does that now. So the entire future history gets recalculated every time you insert a line or delete a line. Although apparently not, because it should be working. But anyway, so that I can just delete that. That's actually done. And there should be an issue for that already that's in the done log. Show world for line with content. This is like a debugger thing. This is like on screen, show which world you're looking at. And then with content would be, so on screen, show the world number as you move the outline cursor. Also have a display of the variables in scope that changes as you move the cursor. Yeah, so I think that's a great idea. I don't think it needs to have a question mark at the end of it. Fix loop KVM so that we don't, the left argument, yeah, that's low priority. There's stuff with namespaces going on, but I think fixing the key binding stuff, like those namespaces, or the left argument does not need in the Z lookout. I think once the right argument becomes the name of a namespace, I think that I'll be able to clean the left side argument up much more. Rearrange NJE so that open, yeah, that's the technical debt thing. I'm gonna move that to the top of the non-important backlog. Numeric prefix for multi-commands. Yes, I definitely want this. To me, this is like a high priority feature. I don't know how high, but definitely a high. This is especially important for timings, for pauses. And to go along with that, once you have so the idea is you'd be able to put 7 pauses in a row. And then once you do that, once you have that feature, then the related feature would be to set base tempo for playback in KPS, characters, keystrokes per second. And that's part of JKVM edit, the edit widget. My phone's going off all of a sudden. Hang on a second. This is the height of professionalism, is to check your, Slackbot is waking up because it's 9 a.m. Oh, so it's the end of the show. So I guess this was a triage episode. I'm going to keep going for a little bit. This is all going to be edited down quite a bit. Toggle selection mode, highlight the selection. I think there's already a line that says selection. Draw the selection, yeah, so highlight the selection, that's the same thing. Toggle selection mode. Is that different from showing the selection? So you're not always going to have a selection visible on the screen, but then the selection is just empty, and so then you show an empty thing. So I don't think that's a toggle. I don't think there's anything to toggle there. Okay, so now these are the ones I have not prioritized yet. Emit color codes only when they change, and emit only change cells. This is part of optimizing the output for render and blit. I'll just make those subtasks there. Define applications widget in a table with XY class args. This is not important, but it's interesting that it's talking about another table where you use a table to define the layout of something. That's interesting. In the REPL, if I print out a non-noun syntax highlighted. Right, so if I print out a verb or an adverb syntax highlight the output, that makes sense. I think that's a priority B. Add word wrap mode. That's the same thing as the wrapping is it? No, it's not. This is a low priority thing. This is, come on. So not just wrapping, but breaking on spaces and showing and making some lines in multiple lines. And make some lines multi-lines. So what am I talking about, the outline or the editor? I think both. But let's just constrain it to the outline for now. So this is in JKVM list, so list control. In the list control, add word wrap mode to list control, and eventually multi-line editor. Not just wrapping characters, but breaking on spaces or hyphens or something. Would need to track the height of each entry now. Extract UI component from UI app. So this is a refactoring. Yeah, it's a technical debt kind of thing. It's a refactoring, but come on, that's at the framework level. I think it's actually useful because a lot of things are starting to become like components with subcomponents. And right now I have to explicitly say when to draw them and how to draw them and all that stuff. So I think And making that a little more flexible should be useful. All right, so I can move these up to the sorted area, right? I think this line was to indicate where I stopped sorting. So now that I've done that, I'm here, and this is an older line that was meant to indicate that I have stopped prioritizing as well, or I stopped having any prioritization. So now that they are sorted and prioritized. Add ability to run arbitrary verbs on every frame. The idea was to the idea here was to have a general purpose task runner that was not necessarily tied to a widget. I don't remember why I wanted this. I don't remember why I wanted this, but it's easy to simulate with an invisible widget. Is there any need for anything more than that? Is there any need for more than this? Oh, you can make a D. I'm gonna make the Z. D. Open quote breaks the lexer. Yeah, that's true. Is it really a bug? No, because that's just how the lexer works. So ABC, that's not an open quote. Now we're in a string and end the open quote. Like you get an open quote error from the J lexer. I don't think that's a bug. I think the way I handle it is fine in here, where if you have open quote, it just defaults to a plain old text editor instead of the syntax highlighted one. Or if it falls back, it degrades, not defaults. It degrades to a plain old text editor. I'm okay with that. I don't think this is a bug. I don't think there's anything else to do here. I think that's absolutely fine. REPL widget, enhance shell for J before, etc. Yeah, okay. Edit J function, preserve source code, integrate with JOD, up down history. All this is done. This is what I've been working on for weeks. Preserve source code. I think that's the move it to the left-hand side, the move it to the editor. Integrate with JOD would be cool. So I've never really used JOD, but JOD is like a database for the J object dictionary. So it's basically you create a list of words. If I did this, would be way low priority. Anyway, outline widgets for presentations. We got that, so that's not important. To do stack widget. Definitely want a stack widget. So stack widget is just a general purpose. It's like a list. Like how's that different from a list? Maybe it's color coded. Maybe it goes in reverse order. Puts the thing on top. Is this different from? So is this even different from a list? Is this widget color coding? Maybe color coding. Maybe I just need another list widget on the screen. I'm not sure. But let's talk about what the goal is of this. But the goal is different. It's to show the current state of the narrative. So it exists in presentation space, not user space. It's an on-screen in presentation widget. It's an on-screen in presentation widget that changes with timeline. Changes as you navigate through time. Yeah. So that is the difference. It's just it would just be a list control visually, but over time the state would change. So you would see things added and removed from the stack. So stack widget in timeline, like in the timeline. Yeah. So that's part of the presentation logic that I want for the future. It's not really important. It's not high on my list right now. It's something I want for the future. Just to make a status as you're skimming through the video. What am I working on at that point in time? Like, why am I doing this thing? Or if somebody joined your stream late. Why is this guy working on this thing? What is he doing? What's the goal here? It's a goal stack widget in timeline. Yeah, I think this is actually probably just a list widget, but it's part of the timeline. All right, have put s recognize escape codes, ANSI colors. These all work. I think bright doesn't work. Right? Reset definitely works. The only one I don't have is bright, but you can explicitly set the color to lighter or bright. CSI 1M mode, bold. It's not. How about bold is definitely a useful option, but is that the same? Because that changes the font. Bold. CSI, is it CSI 1M? That's bright mode, or is that just bright? Also, I don't know if my actual terminal supports bold and italic. So scrolling, that's already on my list. So I'm gonna just call these escape codes, right? So VT code, cursor shift. I think that actually works. JKVM, VT, IJS, and something about cursor, right? Cursor up, down, left, right. Cursor U. So I have the strings, but I don't have the. Hang on, this is put s. So this is put s. This is in. Is it in here? No, it is in VT, but hang on. Yeah, it's called v put s. It's in vid. Have vid put s. I'll just call it put s in vid. Recognize escape codes. Okay. So in that case, what we're talking about is IJS, v put s. It's not put s, but process VT escape codes. This needs to be cleaned up dramatically. I did assign like recursive descent parser, and it's not. I should have done something simpler. It works, but it's ugly. Yeah, I don't even want to mess it. I think what I really want to do is make v put s vid table driven. Yeah, derive the state machine from a list of the opcodes, a list of the escape codes. I have some tools for parsing, and I just didn't want to introduce a dependency, but like I'd rather introduce a dependency or even just include a copy of the state machine, or maybe use the state machine in the development tool, and then when I ship the product, it has the compiled version included. And so it would only be a dev mode dependency, a development time dependency, because this is horrendous. And this is not a complicated thing. It's really just a table of escape code sequences, and it should be a table. It should be like, this is the string, and then this is what you do. And you alphabetize that string, and then you can derive the state machine from that. But this is just ugly, horrifying. The code, the current code is horrifying. Is a horrifying, is that right? I think I don't have a spell checker on here. It is a horrifying, it's a horrifying recursive descent parser. So we'll do some talks about parsing. Anyways, now vputS, all these things need to be added to that list as well. But enable line wrap is what I was talking about for. I guess that would be in vputS, right? So in my current sprint, I have something that says this, or in my plan for the current sprint, so I have wrapping. So what does that actually mean? So we want, this would be a toggle or an option for the behavior of putS in vid. And then the escape code is the toggle wrapping. This would be an option in, or this should be added to the parser in vputS vid when writing to video buffer. Yeah. Okay. So document import CWIO, that is extremely low priority. That's even a D. It doesn't let me say D here, but it's D. Document import CWIO. This is because CWIO is color, and I can put a link to that for anybody who ever reads this in the future. GitHub.com, tangent storm, XPL, the cross Pascal library, cross-platform Pascal library, code, CW. Not that there's any documentation here, but maybe I put it. Is there a org mode? I tried to make some of these literate code when I was cleaning up my old code, but there's KVM for Pascal. Let's do a demo of CWIO. Example, there we go. There's an example. All right, file browser widget. Yeah, that's not important for me, but yeah, it's going to become more important as time goes on. Definitely to have a file browser. Full stack widget. Yeah, file browser widget. Document import CWIO is very low priority. Make vputS, is that, I didn't prioritize this, so make vputS table driven. It's ugly. V. Maybe make this kind of a cleanup thing as after I get some more stuff done. I don't know, I might reprioritize that later, but always the prioritization is up for grabs. Okay. A git status widget implies having a file browser. After we have a file browser, we have a file browser. It's very low priority. I'm not even call it D. Terminal mode view mat. That's done. Been done for a long time. We have true color, yeah, all this stuff. That's long done. Editor file commands, load file, save file. Those are done. And we have an entry in the backlog about making them global keys, so I think that can be removed. Text editor component. I think this is just super old stuff. Draw it. Fake cursors in the buffer. Yeah, we have a fake cursor, so we can control the on-screen cursor and all this. Keyboard commands, insert character, delete character, cut, copy, paste. Undo is not on the list, but that's all in the backlog. Except maybe undo. Do I have undo? What is this? Token editor, undo built in from the start. Yeah, so we need undo. And that might even be a priority A, right? Like undo. General undo system for all widgets. JKVM, like just the whole UI system. All right, so let's see. Missing KVM features. Fetch a real terminal dimensions. We can do that, yes. That's done a long time ago. Don't know when it was done, so I'm just gonna delete it. Make sure I can fill the entire screen. We have that. You can hit the bottom right-hand corner and it doesn't wrap. Disable Control-C on Linux. Yeah, we tried that. I did that a long time ago. Mouse events. I have a parser for mouse events. I don't do anything with them. To do, I just really want to see demonstrate mouse events. JKVM. It's 926. I'm just gonna go through this whole file. This is gonna be cut down dramatically again. I don't even know if I'll publish this one, but whatever. More mouse events. Oh, okay. Show console in JQT. So JShow console is a verb that comes with J, and it's meant to show the actual console. And every Windows program could attach to a console. And so the idea would be you would get the actual text mode console in JQT. It's not. This is extremely low priority. I called it 9 here. I think that's meant to be what I'm calling D now. Like it's just super low priority. Because the more important thing, maybe better idea would be this is like the Windows console, OS console in JQT. Better idea would probably be. What am I trying to say? The better idea would probably be make a terminal emulator in JQT. I actually like that way better because then you would have. Do I even care about this? I think I have a canceled area down here. I think this is just so not important. Do I even care about this? Because better idea would be to make a terminal emulator. Make our own terminal emulator in J. So I'm not sure I even care about this. Not sure I even care about this. So first of all, it's not something I can fix. It would have to be. It would have to be in JQT itself, in the JQT front end itself. And second, not sure I care about it because you've got the Qt terminal, but the Qt terminal doesn't support ANSI escape codes or UVT escape codes. But maybe the better thing would be to just make a new terminal object that did this, and then make it an OpenGL and have graphics and all that stuff. JQT or OpenGL or SDL or something like that. And then that would have a SDL wrapper. I'm just not even going to give it a to-do item here. Just say it's low priority. All right, missing KVM features. Split sub-windows. That's all done, yeah. I had to ask how to do that, and Bob Terrio, I think, answered my question. Yeah, Bob T. So it turned out to be easy. I just didn't know you could do this in using... I didn't know there was a syntax for it in Amend. But the code's already in the system, and maybe I should put like a little note that said thanks to Bob, or just put a little context into what's going on there. JTalks, JKVM, bid, split. It's not that complicated. It's just these row and column indices. Okay, since I did ask the question, and there's an explanation for how to do it. Virtual terminal buffer, state variables, handle end of line behavior. All this is done except possibly the end of line wrapping behavior. I think it's all done. Term stack, we've got all that stuff done. Low priority terminal enhancements. On redraw, compare buff versus cache. That's already in the backlog somewhere. Check the same runs of foreground and background colors. I think this was maybe an attempt to do that. But I don't need that. Generate a list of changes, blah, blah, blah. I guess this is my algorithm. I'm going to copy this. I don't know how, I don't want to sit here and parse it all right now, but I think I'll just copy it for reference in up here somewhere. So I think it's A, like a priority A. Yeah, optimize output for render blit. I'll copy that in here. All right. Low priority terminal enhancements. That's representing the video buffer more compactly. I was making. Do I want bytes? Do I want it to store every character as 4 bytes because I have Unicode? So what happens now is that if your buffer contains, J can take an input and turn it into ASCII characters, Unicode characters stored as 16-bit, or Unicode characters stored as 32-bit, and it will find the most efficient representation for you based on what it decodes. And whatever J comes up with is just what goes into the character buffer. So I think, so then if you use a bunch of weird characters, do you really want to try? Do you really want that? You wind up using 4 bytes for the letter A, right, which is 1 byte, right? Because you need to have them all be the same space. And I think that's absolutely fine. I'm quibbling over 4 bytes when if you've got a 200 by 200 screen, it's the same amount of memory as a 200 by 200 image, like each pixel. So it seems wasteful, but it's so tiny that it doesn't even matter. So I think I'm just going to delete this entire thing. I don't need to be more compact. Missing KVM features, go away. Text editor component. Okay, so now the text editor. So that is a widget. Okay, so I have some amount of, I guess this is really just thinking about what the register should be. Current text as a whole, current page, current line, current cursor. line buffer. So, the page is the idea that you divide your file not just into lines, but into pages with the Control L key. I don't know. J actually allows you to have that if it's directly followed by a new line or directly preceded by a new line. But I guess it doesn't work so well in JQT or something like that. I'm not sure. But I use that in my code and sometimes to just help me organize things, like not this one, but MJE, for example, probably. Yeah, we got separate pages, so you don't have to scroll. And this line always winds up at the top of this page as I move back and forth. So you can navigate a little more easily, I think. So I want my editor to do that, but this is, I guess at some point I would be using this editor to, edit all my code. Like even in the stream, whatever, I would just be hiding this stuff and just using it as my editor. And if it became a good enough editor, and then I would be able to record the whole editing experience as like a timeline that I can go back and edit when I record these episodes, right? Rather than recording my screen, I could just take that and have to play my audio back in sync. And that's a long-term kind of thing, because then I'm basically building a video editor. But the point being that at some point, this could be more than just a slide on the screen, more than just a presentation tool. It would be a full like main text editor, not just a presentation editor, in which case I would definitely want that. But all this other stuff, line editor commands, yeah, they're all cool. Like that's all. This doesn't really have, the line editor already does this. You can delete words, you can swap characters. I don't know if it handles either direction, but you can make that happen. You press T, press Control T and switch characters around. It does not have undo, but that's on my list also somewhere. I don't think this is important. I don't think this is adding anything to my knowledge about what the text editor should do. I'll keep it just in case. No, I guess I don't even have a. So pages for text editor. I'm going to call this paging in text editor, and I'll make that a to-do, but very low priority. So D, the text editor component. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure that the text editor right now is a component. What is the editor? It's just it doesn't even have a class. It's just UI widget. Right now, the editor, the jprez editor, is just a UI widget, a plain UI widget. So this would be making a class. Yeah. So this is. I think that's the start, and that would be a very small thing to do. So like actually make a class. So actually that even goes in here because we're talking about making a text editor component. So just define a text editor component, and that would be a very small task just to make a file for that thing. But I never actually prioritized this one, did I? I never put a priority on it. Support the escape codes to toggle wrapping. I think it's low priority. I'm going to leave it in the sprint because I said I would do it, but I'm going to move it to the bottom, and if I don't get it done, I don't really care. Top macro during playback, that's important. Yeah, so these are all sorted. Now the backlog is sorted. Okay. Oh, elastic tab stops. That's really cool, but low priority, super low priority for editor. I'll make it a C because that's I think that'll be fun to do. Elastic tab stops just means that the tab character moves to, they line up across lines and everything. I think that'll be a fun thing to implement. Google, it's really cool. Elastic tab stops. Integrate with JOD. I'm going to move this to the top. This is extremely low priority. No time. Integrate with JOD is extremely low priority. Even a D, maybe not even a to-do. I'm going to cancel this. I don't know enough about JOD to do that. I think JOD is cool and interesting, but just completely out of scope right now. Out of scope for now. Out of scope, at least for now. How about we call this someday maybe? Someday maybe. That's from getting things done, right? You put things that you're not committed to doing on a list. These at least have some level of at least commit to think about doing it. These are just way off in the future, like maybe someday. Not throw it away, but somewhere off. J wish list. So these are things that are not part of this program. All right, so these are things that I've talked about on camera. So not on the J list. So we don't ask for it on J list, but on GitHub, JSource, JSoftware, JSource. I didn't publish the video for this, but I actually have gone through, and there is now on JSource, I guess the video is on Twitch, but so I added a bunch of stuff that was on the J website, and then Henry has gone through and he's got 75, or he added a whole bunch of stuff. He brought the total up to 75, not up to 79, but all kinds of like things that were on his task list. And it added some help wanted and some good first issue tags and that kind of thing. But there really should be labels on them called enhancement requests, and I don't have rights to do that. You can't see them, but you can't sort by them. But it's the author tangent sort, right? Anything that I did was not really my request so much, but rather things that I copied from the J wiki. And then there are one or two of them that are my requests. One of them being this one, if name, the special string for starts with and ends with. There's a better way to do that, which I agree with this way of doing it, but it's longer than writing this, and so I wanted the short version to be a special form and to have like special code behind it. I think I'm actually going to do this. I think I'm going to take it. He said he wouldn't mind if he would accept the patch if somebody could do it. So I think I'm going to sign up to make that happen at some point in the future. Because right now it works. It finds every match for the string rather than, and then it checks, okay, is the start also a match? But really you only need to check the start, and so I think that could be optimized, and then that would be a very nice idiom for starts with, and then do it under reverse for ends with. So anyways, what do I do with these? So first of all, this is. But in a way, I think these are the opposite, because this is done in that it is on the wish list. So if I search for .@e, I want a issues. Yeah. Oh, hang on, look at that. Oh no, yeah. So he's talking about the index of all the matches. I'm talking about the first match. So I'd like to learn how to do that and then actually contribute to the code. So I say that's done in the sense that it's out of my hands and now in the J repository. I might go back and do that as a future episode, but in terms of getting it into the J consciousness, that's done. Whereas this one, I did post to a list, but I didn't actually make a suggestion for what the right thing to do is. So the idea is that in Python, you have this if name equals main thing that you can test to see, is the current file being run directly or is it being imported? And I want a flag set in import. And so I think these are really enhancement requests. And so I actually have several of these that I want to add. I'm not sure if this is the right place to track them, but since this is a show about J, I'm going to track them. So formally suggest double dot as a separator. That's one thing. Suggest double dot as a separator. Suggest a flag in load or counter, like I don't know what you call it, like a counter stack, a nesting counter in load for handling name equals main. Then you would test that counter and say, am I loading? So am I being loaded into another namespace? If so, do nothing. But if I'm being run directly from the J REPL, then so the idea would be have a flag called loading counter called loading, set by load, set incremented and decremented by load, incremented and decremented by load, so that we can just test for loading, for not loading, for or is main maybe, or run direct or something. We can just test for top level not loading, for direct run direct. So anyway, the point is that you would have your code in a verb that would be like something like, so startup code goes here, startup code inside of loading, if main or something like that, something like that, if main. So I need to formalize this proposal and add it as a J enhancement proposal. So J enhancement proposal. So as a statement separator. I suggested this on the mailing list, but it's not a ticket. It's not in the system. It's a separator. Nesting counter in load. To do formally suggest nested namespaces for, maybe even in names. In names. In other words, allowing this to become part of the syntax for names. In names for namespaces. For namespaces, nested spaces. Because right now it uses a double underscore and it's just not pretty. And I think that well, it's not that it's not pretty. It's that it's very hard to mix. To define like the member of an object in a namespace, you just can't say that. You have to define a temporary variable to hold the object in the namespace, and then you can look at its members. And so, like, and also the namespaces are. I foresee as J becomes more popular that you're going to see collisions in namespaces, especially since a single import can trigger multiple namespace imports. Like for example, when I import JKVM, like a lot of these things. So all the zeros are objects, all the UI, but like toked. So if you import jprez, you get toked because of the token editor. You get UI app, you get UI edit widget, UI list, UI REPL, UI syntax line. I think that's part of jprez. But you get all these things. Then you got like namespaces for the keyboard handling and stuff. And so it's a lot of work. So yeah, I don't know about if that's a good idea. I don't actually know what's in the ed namespace. Names ed. I'm not sure where that came from. I'm not sure where ed comes from. That seems like a mistake to me. But yeah, and then of course I've imported other things. So you have all these at the top level. And I feel like in particular, the fact that I've got one of these for every class name, how many, you have to put a prefix on every class name. And I would much rather be able to refer to things locally and whatever. Yeah, I want this for J. So I need to write a formal ticket about that. And maybe that'll be on the show at some point. I think there was one or two more. These are definitely they're not related to this application, so I don't know of a better place to track them until I move them onto GitHub. Maybe I can remove this one, but maybe these should go in the JTalks. I moved this file from JTalks to JKVM because I wanted, this is in jprez, so in the jprez repository, but I think maybe this one should probably go in JTalks because I don't know if it's part of the show, but the backlog isn't a backlog for the show, it's a backlog for this repository, and so this is probably the wrong place to hold that. So I'm going to move that to JTalks, J enhancement proposals, J enhancement proposals. Ask for or suggest these on GitHub software JSource. I think for a long time there hasn't really been it's been a small company and people discuss things on the mailing list, but now that it's been open source J has been open source for several years, and I think that it's been open source in that the source is available, but it hasn't really been like an open source project in the sense of building a community of developers and like other people, outsiders making decisions. It was Roger Huey doing all the work and on the interpreter, and then I guess Chris Burke and Bill Lamb and so on, and I guess Henry had committed some things. And anyway, and of course Eric Iverson and Ken Iverson. But I'm not sure I don't know if Henry actually works for J Software now or he just is very active. But in any case, Henry has started maintaining J, and Eric Iverson did that Arraycast podcast the other day or a couple weeks ago, and he's made it clear that they want to be more active in recruiting people and opening this up to the community. They don't want to just accept anything that comes your way, but I think that once they say yes, we're gonna do this feature, I think they need to be able to communicate that. And so I've been trying to nudge them, or not nudge them, I'm trying to help encourage that effort that they're already doing, to be more formal about how they decide what requests get done. And part of what they've done in the past was have a wiki page where you could edit these things. And now I've moved everything that was on that wiki page to GitHub, and so now you can have the discussion there. And I think that will start to become the place for proposals. I don't know. I don't know exactly how it's gonna work, but yeah. But long story short, I think there's some work to be done in that area to help J become a more modern open source project in the sense of community building, and I would like to try and help with that, both through outreach through the show and by actually taking on some of these tickets. Like I suggested this one, so in the spirit of open source, I should be the one, or it makes sense for me to try and implement this if I have the ability and the permission. So Henry said, yeah, he's okay with the idea. So if somebody wants to do it, he'll sign off on it. So I should step up and do that. So anyway, long story short, these are J enhancement proposals. I guess I will add that in the JTalks directory. Maybe I should call this tangent stream. My YouTube channel has a category called JTalks, and all the scripts are in here. But maybe this is really, I don't know, git add J enhancement proposals. Maybe it should be called like tangent storm or tangent stream or something like that. Git add jeps.org. Start on J enhancement on my list of J enhancement proposals. All right, whatever. CD that. All right, go back to your old directory. Okay, so back to this. With that out of the way, we're down to one unprioritized thing, which is token editor. That certainly is out of date. Why does that say 4 of 16? Oh, I see. There's more things in there. Right, connect the buffer editor to the slide. So that is already on my list up above. Make the editor into a widget. I guess technically that's done, but it's not a class. That's also on my slide. Ability to insert edit plain text lines. On save. Yeah, these are editing the outline editor, not the token editor. That's okay. So the token editor is like the syntax directed thing that does not exist yet, or is providing syntax highlighting, but nothing else yet. Hook keyboard up to token editor. Yeah, that works. Show each input line's input number in the text itself or something. That's covered above by showing the world number. Record in the repo. That's done. Add special pop-up editor for editor macro lines. This was the idea that I don't know. I think maybe this even predated the macro language. But now that I have the idea of a macro language that is somewhat readable, even though it's ugly and has a bunch of question marks and underscores in it, like it is somewhat readable. I think that this is kind of, I don't need this, but I was picturing like something that would like have like individual timestamps or something like that. I don't know. Let's just see. Let's call it even a D. This would be, the idea here would be something that gave you more of a fine-grained control over the timeline without having to edit macro code. So almost like a timeline view, or like an old school MIDI tracker, like a MIDI mod tracker. I don't know if that means anything. Maybe I'll put a reference to a mod tracker UI, mod tracker UI for music. Yeah, like this. So yeah, this like grid display where the each line is, this is a score in music where you've got up and down represents the timeline. So the time is flowing from top to bottom, and then you've got a bunch of different instruments. And so you can coordinate the scripting of these instruments over time. I wonder if this, like having this for the macro recorder makes no sense. I mean, it makes a little bit of sense if you wanted like fine-grained control of the timing. So rather than editing underscores and whatnot, you could see the timing visually. But having multiple columns for what happens in the editor versus what happens in the REPL, that's very interesting. That's extremely interesting. Wow, that's really, that actually solves part of my problem, because my problem was that I'm recording, I want to record this macro where the macro recorder is part of the line editor, but I need to start recording things at the, not at the widget level, but at the application level. It's called a mod editor. And the idea is that a mod file was just a kind of file that I think came from like Amiga for sound. In the past, I made a similar interface like this for MIDI. And the way MIDI works, MIDI, musical instrument digital interface, and the way MIDI works, and you can hook up your keyboard for it. You can have 10 instruments, like electronic instruments, keyboards, and MIDI drum pads and things like that, all lined up in a row, connected like daisy chained through MIDI cables, just cables. Like now we use USB, but there used to be like a dedicated MIDI port that you would plug into your serial port or something like that. And then the ports are still standard on the, like your keyboard, your music keyboard would have a MIDI input and then a USB output or whatever. So the idea is that since it's all in a line, it's not really a network, it's just a pipeline. So your computer could be connected to a keyboard, which is connected to keyboard number 2, which is connected to a drum pad. And if your computer wants to send a message to the drum pad, you just assign like numbers to the instruments, and then you send them all down the same pipe. And then each instrument looks at the messages coming through and says, is this message for me? Oh, okay, I'm number 1. And it says number 1, play the note A. So I play A. And then I'm not number 3. So I let it go. And then the second keyboard says, I'm number 2, I'll let this go, and send it down the pipe. And then number 3 says, oh yeah, I'm number 3. So I'll play the drums according to the message coming from the computer. And so that's how MIDI works. You can basically have a byte that says, which channel is this going to? And I think that's what we want in the macro language. Like we want, I'm picturing like the at sign, okay, at editor, like which one who am I talking to right now? So by changing the scope of who I'm talking to with the at sign, that would say like at E would be, maybe at R is the REPL, at E is the editor, at S is the goal stack thing, or at G is the goal stack thing, or at D would be a debugger or some other widget that would be on the screen. They would have names, single character names, since everything's single character. And then at D would tell you which one you're talking to, and then that would be like a universal swap. And so that would make your macros very confusing and complicated. But if you laid them out on a table like this, then you would just have a D for the debugger, and E for the editor, and R for the REPL, and G for the goal stack, and whatever the other ones were, whatever widgets you wanted to give names to, you would put them here, and then you would be able to see the timeline. And oh wow, that makes a whole lot of sense. I think that'd be really cool. I'm excited by this, and suddenly it's an A instead of a D. Not just for macro line, not for editor macro lines, but for macros, for multi-widget macros. I think this is very cool. I think this is a very useful feature. I'm going to put this at the top of the backlog because I'm not ready to jump on it yet. But I want to give this a little more time to bake, but I think that definitely is going to be something I want to do. The whole point of this was to grab a example UI for nobody knows what I'm talking about, for people who don't know what I'm talking about. All right, yeah, this is already on the list. Yeah, it must, so once you see a macro line, the next line must be a non-macro line that just shows the output in case your macro gets corrupted or doesn't work. And then we should verify that the macro contains what you think it is. Yeah, or the macro actually produces the line. Button to play an animation in place in the REPL, that's done. Toggle focus, we've done that. Separate UI widgets for each level. Word editor, line editor, and text editor. Yeah, so the word editor is not really important. I did that for a while, but I think that just having the line editor tokenized on the fly just seems nicer. And then the text editor will be a separate widget that contains a line editor, just the outliner contains that. That's already covered by other things in this backlog. Draw editor widget instead of a slide, yep. Make a code edit class, not KVM, that's already done. Yeah, so I don't necessarily want, we'll think about that. Again, I want to minimize dependencies, so I don't know if JLEX really ought to be part of JKVM, but maybe coloring source code is such a common thing to do that maybe it ought to be in there. I don't know. But then what about the next language number 2? Like what if I want to edit K code or something like that? All right, so yeah, draw the this is highlight syntax. Yeah, that's pretty much how the single line editor works. I'm okay with this. Handle editor keyboard commands, focus flag, toggle tab key. We have, it's not a flag on the editor, but a flag that comes to when you render the thing. The app knows what the focus is. This is messy. So that's a whole can of worms that I'm already on my list. Undo is already on my list. Move between lines, on the line, position cursor, copy and paste is up there. Oops. Keys to expand and contract selection. So that selection is already covered elsewhere. I don't think it actually says explicitly to move the cursor up and down. But it does say draw the cursor, and yeah, I think that's basically covered. If it's not covered explicitly, it's implied. Record keyboard events with timing, that's already, so this was really for the one-line token editor, and now it's like the buffer editor. All right, so that is the entire backlog. It's 10:10, I still have about half an hour before I absolutely have to leave. I'm gonna move this to the top of the backlog, and then now the inbox for triage. So this is not even, don't even have, this is just random ideas that came to me. So let's see if we can, let's do a little macro that turns each of these into maybe even to do F4. All right, I wonder if live bug triage or backlog grooming is gonna become a genre of videos, at least on my channel. Okay, key. This is priority A. I normally use Control A to move to the line, but when I use the arrow keys, it's much more natural for me to use the arrow keys and then hit home or end. So home and end need to be end key to move to the end of the line. Those are, I'm going to put those in the sprint. There's like a bunch of little keys and stuff. Key, I think there's another one. Yeah, so key, JKVM, key, Control S anywhere should save anywhere. Right now you have to be focused on the outline. Yeah, that's specific. Right now you have to be focused on the outline. I think that's right. Key. This could be done by having a global keys namespace that all keyboard handlers use. Let's see. Oh, I wonder about something. So if I'm in, so what are some names? The word names, for example, is in the Z namespace. What happens if I say name of base? Is it okay? It does do the lookup. So then I think that's very useful. Then okay, all keyboard handlers can see. All keyboard handlers can see. All keyboard handlers can co-insert. Yeah, so I like that idea. That's very important, especially since there's no visual indication of a save. I don't want to accidentally not save, and that kind of moves us closer to better keyboard handling. Yeah, this is probably lower priority. This is more like a framework level thing. After I do that, real keyboard handlers. So add real on-focus handlers after. Not sure what this means. It's probably just JKVM app. Maybe it's widget, UI, whatever. Check for multi-line input. Check allow nested directFs. Right? DirectFs. That's important, but it's not as important as having the editor. And once I have the editor, then I'll be running things in the REPL, and they might show up in the REPL. This is a B. Visual indication that the file actually saved when you press Control S. It's almost a no-brainer, except where do you put it? So do I need a status line widget? So that's JKVM. Or really just a jprez. I think if I fix the focus, then or fix the save handler, then I think that's okay. But it's a nice thing to have later. Default tab key handler should be called next widget on main app. That kind of goes in with the whole JKVM with the whole UI framework. Better idiom for expressing method self. I don't know if that's something I do in user space like that. It might be nice if self were a keyword, but then right now you're talking about maybe this ties in with the concept. I don't know, for nested spaces. But conames and names don't currently occupy the same namespace, the same space, namespace. Like conames already do not have identifiers. So I don't know, but maybe they should, right? Maybe they should. Maybe you should be able to refer to the current, maybe is X in current namespace. I don't know. But I think this is is really half-baked, so this is unclear. How about that? I wouldn't even put it to do on here. This is something to think about. In exec world, decide what to do when error happens and the debugger is on. Yeah, that's unclear. We need some design work here. So let's call this like maybe design work needed. Probably want to start in REPL mode. Yeah, I do. Start in REPL mode. Yeah, that's easy. That's just by default set the focus to the REPL. So that's easy. Stay in REPL mode. That's already done. I implemented that. So now once you go into REPL mode, you have to hit tab to get out, which I like. Rename MJE to JPEG. I'm going to do this right this second. I do this in every episode. I'm like, why don't I call this MJE? Why don't I call it? I'm going to do that right this second. Then we will actually accomplish something in the world. Right. Move. So kit, move, MJE, jprez.ijs. Git commit, send, MJE to jprez. I think you have to actually say both of them too. All right, so now we can rename this window to jprez, and it's jprez.ijs. Why is there? Okay, so the README uses jprez.png. How about screenshot.png? And then git move jprez.png, because I don't want tab completion to always stop in the middle there. Screenshot. Nope, I don't want it to README screenshot. How about that? To README, I'm happy with it. Yeah, screenshot.png. And then git add readme, and then gd git commit rename screenshot for happier tab completion. Git push and just make sure I didn't break that on the website. GitHub. That's not the right repository. Yep, that's the right repository. So that still works. And it's called readme screenshot down at the bottom. So we're all good there. Okay, so that's done. My one issue so this is Regim's 20 more backlog, sprint backlog grooming 2, the revenge. Backlog grooming part 2, and rename that. So I just renamed that. My one commit. Okay, so Control C should be copied. I don't think I break anymore. So now if I say jprez, Control C does nothing, but Control C does do something. Okay, Control C should be copy, not break. So that would be KCC. Interesting. What causes it to break? Oh, okay, so KC does break. KC, Control C should not break. I thought I'd fix this a while. Should not break out of the application. So that actually is important. I don't know how to do that though. I'd say it's a B, and it's important as soon as I start to implement copy and paste. So copy and paste to a B, so it'll be a B. Should not break the whole application. Yeah. Control space actually should break the whole application. Like you do want some key to exit your application, so why not control space? Maybe pick another key though, because control space is used in Emacs to set the mark. Control space here, and then you move to the end of the line to go into selection mode. Go to selection mode. Enter selection mode. So rather, control space should enter selection mode. So pick a new default. Control space is used. Yeah. Pick another key because this to set the mark. Enter selection mode. Pick a new default panic break key, and in maybe control or control. I think that's the escape key, or maybe that, or whatever. So there's a couple of things at the end of the alphabet that get you up to 32 characters. So I guess there would be several of these, 6 of these or so, at the end of the record separator characters in ASCII or whatever, should enter selection mode. Control C in REPL line editor should not break the whole application. Let me triple check that. If I'm in here, Control C, yeah, that does break. Okay. I think that's J itself. I think that like is, let's look. JKVM, if it's handled explicitly, it's in the keyboard handler, which is here. So Control C, But so at the bottom, it would be do break KVM control. Oh, yeah, so it's 3. Key number 3 does that. So how do you do that? And I run jprez. Yeah, okay. So control C does not need to break. So I'm going to say that's done because that's going to be used for copy. And so the fix was to remove the 3 in jkvm.ijs. All right, so in jkvm, we commit that, remove jkvm, remove control C as default break character, add comment about blit amend vid.ijs. Doesn't even warrant a ticket, just something I put there. Not break flag. Fix was to remove one exit key is enough, one exit key is enough. That's a justification there. Okay. Control space should enter selection mode. So that would require picking a default panic break key. Default. How about default panic break key? Because control is enter selection mode again. And then control space should enter selection mode. So I'll say that is a B and this is a B. And all of that is going to be when I do copy and paste, which is probably next sprint. Maybe down the line, maybe 2 sprints, maybe 2 or 3 sprints. Okay. Render UI list, great. Do some golfing, I'm sure, but it's not a user-facing feature. So then old get tags for older episodes. Yeah, so I now have a tag for each episode. I started with 14, I think. Get tag V, tag L. I started with 11. Get tag dash L. Yeah, 11, 13, 14. I guess 12 must have been. I think 12 was the one where I talked about that. I think 12 was the last backlog grooming episode. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. And then the KVM didn't get so much attention, or it doesn't change so much. And then we have the actual releases. But these are for people watching the show if you want to see that. I don't think that's important. You know what? This is an evolving show, and I'm not going to go back and edit those episodes. I just make new things better going forward. So I just delete that. All right, script to automate these tags. Come on, you don't need that. A transparent round window to control the OBS overlay. Yes, I talked about that in a different episode. It's not really part of jprez, except that I will be using jprez for presentations, and it's like a helper tool. I don't know, is it really part of jprez? Maybe it should go in its own repo. We'll do that. Kind of design work. It's something I want to do, but I don't know if it's really. It's more of a this show kind of thing. But you know what? Yeah, this was the old version of this file. CD for jtalks. Git fetch. Git rebase. And then git log. I was creating the J enhancement proposals because of git push. I'm not putting a tag on this for the episodes. That doesn't matter. So now is gsregims.org. It's still in that repo? Okay, I don't want it to be in that repo. Or rather, I do, but yeah, this is all the same stuff. So ideas for regims, whereas this is idea for jprez or kanban or backlog. Backlog, not Kanban. Backlog for jprez. And I'm going to move this to, oops. Are these Emacs windows not connected? They are not connected. Interesting. Why are they not connected? Can't find socket. Start server. That should happen automatically. Emacs. No, I don't need. We don't need. Yeah. So now it's loaded, right? Now I should be able to go. Yes, but I don't have jkvm, jtalks.org. I actually don't have a meeting this morning. The person I meet with is on vacation, so I do need to get to work though. But I'm going to finish this up and then I'll just work late this afternoon. Generate backgrounds for green screen. Yeah, that's also something I want to do for the show. These are like ideas for the show, like improving the show. Make it easy to recover working terminal if there's a bug in jprez, jkvm apps. All right, render UI app and compound widget should clear rFlight on each widget it renders. Yes, I agree with this. It's kind of level B. It's not. Whoops. Hang on. There's a comma and then B. Yeah, I think jkvm UI. So this is important, but I don't know how to do it. Let's see. We need to make sure. Basically, there should just be something you can type that. Make sure echo is on. Make sure terminal is on. Cursor is on. If possible, make sure J's read line gets re-enabled. So jprompt has cursor control. Has cursor control. Yeah, as it says right now, if you try to debug, you try to debug and then you wind up wasting brain cycles trying to see the cursor and all that kind of stuff. I think this is fairly important, just for my own sanity. I'm not sure I know how to do it. It might require some research. So jkvm. I have a reset verb that kind of starts to do that, but extend reset so that the echo is on. That's easy. That's doable. But the read line getting re-enabled, I'm not sure. Not sure what to do there. We'll see. And maybe, at the very least, there should be like a one-letter command or something that you can run or something. I don't know. And then maybe even better would be to have an error trap. Maybe even better would be a global error trap that does this in KVM loop. But I think this goes to the top of the backlog for not this sprint, but just needs a little more thinking along with all these things. I think I got some interesting features coming up, at least interesting to me. Cursor for all JKVM apps. Redefine. So control space KC. So the key control space as break is probably not or define. So instead of K null. Probably be named KVM. So that's the actual null character is control shift 2, so the control @ sign, but control space seems to, I guess maybe PuTTY, my terminal emulator is set up to do this, or something along the way translates control space to the null key. Why C space breaks the application, it was previously defined, but it breaks the application because it explicitly looked for character number 3 if there was no handler for character number 3. So I'm going to delete that. That's explained, and I fixed it just a second ago when I did this. Look for K space instead of K null, and that's in, first of all, that's a priority B. It's not terribly important, but I would like to, that ought to be the name. And then that's in jkvm. When I go back and clean up, so add hist line method. Use add hist line method. This is done. I did this, right? Wait, hang on. So now it's called jprez, right? Yeah. Add hist line. REPL add hist. Maybe I started to do it and I got rid of it. Aren't I hist line? Yeah, it's only in the hist lines. So REPL.ijs has hist lines. Now hist lines is the list. Then so accept. Did I move it into exec world? That's the idea world. BT color. Yeah, so VT color is currently in okay. All right, so really what I'm saying is move. So this is like a cleanup step. So decouple, remove VT. What is it? VT color toke. Remove VT color toke call from worlds. So this is in jprez, and it's just like a tech dev. When I go back and clean up, that's not relevant. So right now, exec calls VT color the history. Maybe the REPL widget itself should just know that no to color history lines. Then we don't need VT color, which actually stores escape characters in the history. So this is just a cleanup thing. It's not terribly important. I'm gonna call it priority C. On a tip, remove consecutive duplicates from history. I don't know if this is it's like way low priority. Reduce engulfing. Okay, sure. D. Design work needed. So I'm gonna move these down to someday maybe, like almost in the same category someday maybe. So now we have a completely ordered backlog except for that kind of stuff, those things. This is still part of the current sprint. All of these episodes were in the current sprint. So let's move this to right at the end of the B backlog, right here. And then so now the C's will be at the top of that backlog, and then I have one, oops, I moved it into the sprint, which has its own, so in the backlog, then the end of the priority B, we'll add all of these, and then they'll be not necessarily ordered, but in at least priority order. And then D goes at the very end. Okay, this is part of software development. What do? You got to do it. Backlog, triage. Okay, so now that leaves, this is meant for the rest of this week. So this is actually something I can do in the rest of the week. This is trivial, yes. This is trivial. Home key, end key, these are trivial. Simply defining the text editor component as a place to start putting things, trivial. Stop macro during playback, not trivial, but easy. Alt D and Alt backspace to delete next word, trivial. Set initial state. It's UI to edit initial state of editor, to set initial state of editor for slide, yeah. That's when we start talking about the editor. Draw the editor cursor. Let's make this, so like this will be like tomorrow, this will be like Tuesday's work. Allow wrapping long output lines. This really can go, this is easy enough to do, so it can go anywhere. Long output lines, this is easy too. These are easy, so I can put these in the easy category, and then let's move these, this says it's prioritized that way. The text editor component is easy, but we can do the text editor day, and that might be 2 or 3 days, but initial state for the slide entails having the cursor so that the rep will push input to the editor, especially definitions. Whenever you define something, you ought to have a button that copies that. Store the state in each world. Yeah, this can all be done in pretty much one day. And I'm just going to remove this. This is not important. It was in my sprint from before. Maybe the editor needs to wrap. Right, we'll move it up here. We'll do it when we do the output lines wrapping. Or maybe not. We'll see. Editor day. Editor. And it's editor episode. Left-hand side, editor episode. And this is just easy stuff. Easy stuff for week 2 of sprint. Okay, so I actually I had quite a bit of stuff in the inbox, but I think that a lot of this was just that I had a bunch of stuff that I had never gone through and prioritized from the previous setup, or the previous backlog grooming episodes. So I think this is actually completely clear now, completely cleaned up and groomed, and we are almost at the 3-hour mark, so this is going to be pain to edit. I got to get to work. All right, thanks for watching me edit my backlog and talk about priorities, and I'll see you tomorrow for some actual code. I am going to go ahead and commit this, but I'll go ahead and sign off here. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.